There are nights when silence is louder than screams, when snow seals doors tighter than locks, and time becomes the most dangerous enemy of all. Tonight's story takes place in a mountain hotel cut off from the world before dawn. A man lies dead in a room that no one could enter, or so it seems. 6 hours, 7 suspects, 1 locked door. This is a mystery where every second matters. This is Locked Room Before Dawn. The snow had begun to fall long before sunset. By the time the last train disappeared down the mountain pass, the Alpine Grand Hotel was already sealed off from the world, its narrow road buried beneath a white, relentless silence. Inspector Arthur Hale stood in the entrance hall, brushing snow from his overcoat. The warmth inside was deceptive. The fire crackled, chandeliers glowed softly, and yet something in the air felt unsettled, like a held breath. The hotel was hosting only a handful of guests that night, wealthy ones, important ones. People who preferred isolation. At precisely 11:40 p.m., the night clerk heard the scream. It came from the second floor, room 217. By the time Hale reached the corridor, the door was already surrounded by guests and staff. Panic clung to them like frost. Someone was sobbing. Someone else kept repeating the same sentence over and over. "It's locked. The door is locked." Hale pushed through calmly, his voice sharp and controlled. "Step back." The door to room 217 was solid oak, no visible damage. No forced entry. Hale tested the handle himself. Locked. From the inside, a single brass key lay on the small table beside the door, unused. "Has anyone entered?" Hale asked. "No," the hotel manager whispered. "We tried. The lock wouldn't turn." Hale nodded slowly. Locked rooms were never as simple as they pretended to be. When the hotel's master key finally opened the door, the room revealed its secret with chilling clarity. A man lay sprawled near the writing desk, mid-40s, well-dressed, his body twisted unnaturally, as if he had collapsed mid-step. No blood, no weapon in sight. The window was shut tight. Frost sealed the frame, snow untouched on the ledge outside. The fireplace was cold. The door had been locked from the inside. Hale checked his watch. 11:57 p.m. Outside, the storm intensified, howling against the walls of the hotel. By morning, the road would be cleared. By morning, the killer would be gone. Hale turned to the 7 figures standing behind him, each avoiding his gaze in their own way. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said quietly, "until dawn breaks, no one leaves this hotel." The silence that followed was absolute. Somewhere deep in the building, a clock struck midnight, and the game had begun. Inspector Hale closed the door to room 217 behind him with deliberate care. The soft click echoed down the corridor louder than it should have. In a building this quiet, every sound felt like a confession waiting to happen. The guests were gathered in the lounge downstairs, arranged by instinct rather than instruction. No one sat too close to anyone else. The fire burned low, throwing long shadows across the carpet, shadows that seemed to stretch and tangle like secrets. Hale stood before them, hands clasped behind his back. "Before we begin," he said calmly, "understand this. The storm has sealed the mountain road. No one arrived after dinner. No one left. The man in room 217 was alive less than an hour ago. That means the truth is in this room." 7 faces. 7 different reactions. Closest to the fire sat Edmund Carraway, a silver-haired financier whose calm felt practiced. His posture was perfect, his expression neutral, as though he were observing a business setback rather than a death. Hale noted the gold signet ring on his finger, worn smooth with age. Beside him, stiff-backed and pale, was Mrs. Eleanor Fitch, a widow dressed entirely in black. Her gloved hands never stopped moving, twisting fabric that needed no twisting. She stared into the fire, lips pressed thin, as if the flames might answer questions she dared not speak aloud. Near the window stood Julian Mercer, younger than the others, his expensive coat thrown carelessly over a chair. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Not frightened, annoyed. The kind of man who resented inconvenience above all else. Opposite him sat Professor Lionel Brooks, spectacles balanced low on his nose, fingers stained faintly with ink. He kept glancing toward the staircase as though measuring distance. Hale had seen that look before. Men who believed intelligence alone placed them above suspicion. At the edge of the room hovered Margaret Doyle, the hotel's night receptionist. She clutched a ledger to her chest like a shield. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes darting every time someone shifted. Fear, yes, but fear could be many things. In the far corner, half swallowed by shadow, was Captain Henry Voss, retired military. Broad-shouldered, rigid, unmoving. He did not look at the others. He did not look at the inspector. He stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, as if awaiting orders. The seventh was absent. Hale turned to the manager. "The victim." "Mr. Victor Langley," the man replied quietly. "Arrived yesterday evening. Requested privacy. Paid in cash." Langley. The name lingered. Hale addressed the group again. "One of you was near room 217 tonight." Mercer scoffed. "You're saying one of us walked in, killed him, locked the door from the inside, and vanished into thin air?" "I'm saying," Hale replied evenly, "that locked doors lie more often than people realize." A flicker crossed Carroway's eyes, just a flicker, but Hale caught it. Mrs. Fitch suddenly spoke, her voice brittle. "He was arguing with someone earlier. I heard raised voices in the corridor." "Did you see who?" Hale asked. She hesitated. "Too long." "No?" Professor Brooks adjusted his glasses. "Langley attended dinner, briefly. He left early. Seemed unsettled." "Unsettled how?" Hale pressed. Brooks chose his words carefully. "As though he recognized someone." The room shifted. Captain Voss finally moved, crossing his arms tighter. "People recognize people all the time." "Yes," Hale said, meeting his gaze, "but not everyone ends up dead before midnight." Margaret Doyle swallowed hard. "The key," she whispered. "The key to his room. He never returned it to the desk." Hale nodded slowly, meaning the door could only have been locked from the inside. Silence fell again, heavier now. Hale stepped closer to the fire, letting its light carve his face into shadow. "You have 6 hours before dawn, 6 hours before the road opens. By then, I will know how that door was locked." He paused, letting his words settle. "And which one of you needed Victor Langley, silenced before morning?" Outside, the wind screamed against the hotel walls. Inside, every suspect understood the same thing. The night was far from over. Inspector Hale returned to room 217 alone. The corridor was silent now, the kind of silence that pressed against the ears. Somewhere below, the fire crackled faintly, but up here the hotel felt abandoned, frozen in time, waiting. Hale closed the door behind him and stood still for a moment, letting his eyes adjust. The room was neat. Too neat. A man planning to sleep, not to die. The bed was untouched. The writing desk held a single sheet of paper, folded once, blank. A fountain pen lay beside it, capped, unused. The suitcase stood open near the wardrobe, clothes carefully arranged, no signs of struggle. Hale crouched near the body. Victor Langley's expression was strange, not twisted by fear or pain, but fixed, almost surprised. His right hand lay open, palm up, empty. No wounds, no blood, no obvious cause of death. Hale stood and turned his attention to the door. Solid oak, old but well-maintained. A traditional mortise lock. Hale tested it again from the inside. It locked easily, unlocked easily. He knelt, examining the gap between door and frame. Narrow, clean, no splinters, no marks. And then he saw it, a faint scratch, low on the inner edge of the door, barely visible unless the light struck it just right. Hale's eyes narrowed. He moved to the floor, running his fingers along the carpet near the threshold. There, slightly disturbed fibers, as though something thin had been pulled beneath the door. A cord? A wire? He straightened slowly. The door had not lied, but it had been made to. Downstairs, Hale found Captain Voss standing alone near the window, staring into the storm. Snow pressed against the glass like a living thing. "Captain," Hale said quietly, "walk with me." They moved to a side corridor away from listening ears. "You served in logistics during the war," Hale said. "Supply lines, equipment." Voss stiffened. "Yes?" "You know how to move things quietly, how to improvise." Voss's jaw tightened. "Are you accusing me?" "I'm asking you," Hale replied, "how a door can be locked from the outside to look like it was locked from within." Silence stretched, then Voss spoke. "With string or wire, loop the handle, pull it through the gap, lock it, withdraw the line." Hale watched him closely. "You sound confident. Anyone who's spent time in the field would know it." "Anyone," Hale echoed, "or only someone who's done it." Voss met his gaze, unflinching. "You think too small, Inspector. If I wanted Langley dead, I wouldn't hide behind tricks." "Interesting." Hale returned to the lounge. The others looked up at once, tension tightening their shoulders. "I believe I know how the door was locked," Hale announced, "which means the room was not secure." A murmur rippled through the group. Julian Mercer laughed sharply. "So, the famous locked room mystery isn't locked after all." "On the contrary," Hale said, "it was locked, just not honestly." Margaret Doyle's ledger slipped from her hands, hitting the floor with a dull thud. Mrs. Fitch stood suddenly. "This is madness. We are respectable people." "Respectable people," Hale said calmly, "are often the most careful liars." Professor Brooks cleared his throat. "Inspector, Langley and I spoke earlier, briefly." All eyes turned to him. "He recognized me," Brooks continued, "from years ago. An academic dispute, nothing more." "Did he threaten you?" Hale asked. "No," Brooks replied. "Too quickly." Hale nodded, filing it away. One by one he watched them react, to the idea that the door had been manipulated, to the realization that the killer had walked freely back into the hotel afterward. No one was safe. No one was innocent. Hale glanced at the clock above the fireplace. 2:18 a.m., less than 4 hours until dawn. And somewhere in this building, the person who had killed Victor Langley was listening very carefully. The hotel did not sleep. Even as the fire burned lower and the storm began to lose its fury, tension filled every corridor. Doors that had once felt private now seemed thin, fragile, poor barriers against suspicion. Inspector Hale chose his next move carefully. He did not announce it. Instead, he waited. At 2:47 a.m., the silence broke, not with a scream, with a sound far more dangerous. Footsteps. Soft. Measured. Moving along the second-floor corridor. Hale was already there when the sound stopped. A door creaked open, then froze. Julian Mercer stood half inside the service room, his hand still on the handle. His coat was on. His shoes were dusted faintly with snow. Mercer blinked. Once. Then smiled thinly. Couldn't sleep. Hale's gaze dropped to Mercer's shoes. You went outside. Briefly. The storm hasn't stopped, Hale replied, and the doors were supposed to remain locked. Mercer shrugged. Rules bend when one has influence. Influence. The word landed poorly. Hale escorted Mercer back downstairs, where the others soon gathered again, summoned by the unmistakable tone of authority. "What's this about?" Carroway asked calmly. Hale gestured toward Mercer. "Mr. Mercer claims he was in his room from midnight onward." Mercer stiffened. "I said I retired early." "You did," Hale agreed, "and Mrs. Fitch confirmed seeing you near the staircase at 11:30. Mrs. Fitch nodded faintly, startled. "But," Hale continued, "the snow on your shoes tells a different story." Mercer's smile vanished. "You left the hotel," Hale said, "after the storm sealed the road." Margaret Doyle's breath hitched. "That's impossible." "Nothing is impossible tonight," Hale said quietly. Mercer exhaled sharply. "Fine. I stepped out onto the rear terrace. Needed air." "At nearly 3 in the morning," Professor Brooks said, incredulous. Mercer's eyes flashed. "This place feels like a tomb." "Funny," Hale replied, "that you'd choose to breathe fresh air shortly after a man suffocates in a locked room." The room went still. "Suffocates?" Captain Voss asked. Hale nodded. "Langley did not die from injury. He died because his breath was taken from him." Mrs. Fitch sank into her chair. Hale continued. "No marks, no wounds, but signs of pressure. A calculated act. Quiet. Controlled." Carroway folded his hands. "You're suggesting Mr. Mercer strangled him." "I'm suggesting," Hale said, "that Mr. Mercer lied about where he was." Mercer laughed bitterly. "You're grasping. Ask anyone. I had no reason to kill Langley." Hale's eyes sharpened. "Then perhaps you'll explain this." He placed an object on the table, a thin wire, barely visible, almost elegant. Margaret gasped. Professor Brooks leaned forward. Voss did not move. "I found it outside the service door," Hale said, "partially buried in snow, recently discarded." Mercer stared at it. "Too long." "This wire," Hale continued, "is capable of 2 things: locking a door from the outside and killing a man quietly." The fire popped loudly. Mercer shook his head. "You can't prove it was mine." "No," Hale said, "but I can prove your alibi is false." Hale turned to the others. "And that means we must re-examine every word spoken tonight." He stepped back, letting the implication settle. Someone else shifted uneasily. Because Mercer was not the only one whose story no longer held. Hale glanced at the clock. 3:31 a.m. The night was unraveling faster now, and with every lie exposed, the real killer was growing more desperate. By 4:12 a.m., the storm had weakened, but the hotel felt heavier than ever. Inspector Hale stood alone in the manager's office. Victor Langley's belongings spread neatly across the desk. Wallet, watch, papers. Too few for a man who had traveled far. No family photographs, no personal letters, no return address. Langley, it seemed, had arrived without a past. Hale opened the wallet again. Inside was a folded slip of paper he had missed before. Old, worn, written in careful ink. A name. Not Langley. Hale's jaw tightened. Downstairs, the others waited. When Hale entered the lounge, conversation died instantly. "I owe you an explanation," Hale said, "and you owe me honesty." He placed the paper on the table. Victor Langley did not exist. A ripple of disbelief passed through the room. Carroway frowned. "That's absurd." "On the contrary," Hale replied. "Langley was an alias. His real name was Daniel Royce." The reaction was immediate. Mrs. Fitch gasped audibly. Professor Brooks went pale. Captain Voss's posture shifted just slightly, but enough. Only Mercer looked confused. "Who was he?" Margaret whispered. "A man who disappeared 15 years ago," Hale said, "after a financial scandal that ruined lives." Carroway's hand tightened on his cane. Royce had been an accountant, a quiet one, trusted, until millions vanished. Evidence pointed in many directions, but Royce vanished before trial. "They said he fled," Hale continued. "They were wrong. He went underground." "And now?" Brooks asked hoarsely. "And now," Hale said, "he returned." Silence fell like a verdict. "He invited you here," Hale said softly, eyes moving from face to face. "Not officially, indirectly. Through business, coincidence, old ties. He wanted to see who you'd become." Mrs. Fitch's voice trembled. "Why?" "Because you destroyed him," Hale replied. She collapsed back into her chair. Royce had been blamed, but the theft? It had been collective. Each of them had taken something: money, influence, silence. Carroway finally spoke. "He would have exposed us." "Yes," Hale said, "before dawn." Voss exhaled slowly. "So one of us killed him to keep the past buried. Perhaps," Hale said, "or perhaps he never intended to expose you." The room stirred. "He wanted something else," Hale continued. "A confession. A reckoning." Hale looked at Mercer. "You weren't part of it. That's why you don't recognize the name." Mercer swallowed. "So who killed him?" he asked. Hale folded the paper carefully. Someone who realized that Langley, Royce, had already won. The clock chimed softly. 4:38 a.m. Outside, the snow began to thin. Inside, guilt thickened the air. Hale met their eyes one by one. "The killer is not the one who hated him most," he said. "It's the one who feared being forgiven." The first pale hint of dawn pressed against the curtains at 5:21 a.m. The storm had loosened its grip on the mountain, but the hotel remained trapped, now not by snow, but by truth. Inspector Hale stood beneath the chandelier, its light dimmed to a tired glow. The 7 of them were gathered once more. No one sat this time. They stood as if instinctively understanding that this was no longer a conversation, but a reckoning. "You've all been very careful tonight," Hale began. "Careful with your words, careful with your silences. But there is one thing none of you have been careful enough to hide." He turned toward Eleanor Fitch. She stiffened. "Guilt," Hale said quietly. "Not fear, not anger. Guilt?" Fitch shook her head weakly. "You're mistaken." "No," Hale replied. "You were the only one who spoke of Langley, Royce, in the past tense before his identity was revealed." The room seemed to tilt. "You said he was a dangerous man," Hale continued. "Not is, because part of you had already accepted that he would not leave this hotel alive." Carroway stepped forward. "Inspector?" Hale raised a hand. "This is not about money anymore, or exposure." He faced Fitch fully now. "Royce did not come to ruin you. He came to forgive you." Fitch's breath caught. "He requested to see you privately," Hale said. "Room 217. He told you he had taken the blame willingly all those years ago, that he believed the rest of you were too weak to face consequences." Tears welled in her eyes. "He told you," Hale went on, "that he wanted nothing, only to hear the truth spoken aloud." Fitch's composure shattered. He looked at me, she whispered, like I could still be redeemed. The room was utterly silent. And you couldn't bear that, Hale said softly, because forgiveness would have meant admitting what you did. She fell to her knees. I didn't mean to kill him, she sobbed. I only wanted him to stop speaking. I panicked. Hale nodded. You used the wire. Prepared earlier. You looped it, pressed, just long enough. She covered her face. The locked door? Hale continued. You locked it honestly, from the inside, and then you exited through the adjoining service door, using the wire beneath the threshold to relock it from the outside afterward. A trick you learned years ago when lies first became necessary. Captain Voss closed his eyes. You dropped the wire in the snow, Hale said, but the snow remembered. Fitch collapsed completely, her confession echoing in the stillness. The clock struck 5:43. Hale straightened. Victor Langley came seeking peace. He found truth instead, and truth, once spoken, cannot be locked away. Outside, the first clear light of morning crested the mountain ridge. The road would open soon. As officers escorted Fitch away, the others stood unmoving, alive, exposed, and changed. Hale watched the dawn break through the hotel windows. The door had been locked. The night had lied. But morning never does. That's a wrap for now. Don't forget to follow us and turn on notifications for more stories.